Hello, I'm Ashley from Through the Loop Yarn Craft, and I'm so excited today to make the Wavecrest wall hanging with you. This wall hanging is quite quick to make and has so many possibilities for color combinations. We're going to be making it horizontal and then flipping it to hang so that the chevrons go vertically. To make the wall hanging, I used less than one of these skeins of the Dishy yarn, which is a number 4 weight cotton, but you can go ahead and try it in any 4 weight yarn that you have on hand. I've also used my 4.5mm Furls crochet hook. The pattern itself is quite simple and quick, using only double crochet and half double crochets. I will also go through each step for adding the hanging loops, putting in your dowel or stick, as well as the top hanger for the walls, and adding your tassels. The dowel I'm using is a 1/4 inch by 12-inch dowel that I just got on Amazon. You can honestly use any size dowel or stick you find outside that you'd like. Don't forget to pop on down the bottom there and click that like and subscribe button so you will be notified of all my new tutorials. In the description down below, you can also find links to the free written pattern to follow along with, as well as links to the materials I've used. So let's gather our supplies and make the Wavecrest wall hanging. All right, so we are going to begin with a chain of 47. And I am starting with the gray color. So you just want to start with whatever your color 1 is going to be if you're doing the different colors. So we'll chain 47. So we've got our chain and we are ready for row 1. So row 1, we're going to be working with double crochets. To start, we're going to do 2 double crochets in the 3rd chain from our hook. So 1, 2, 3, that 3rd one there. So just work your 2 double crochets right into that same chain. And now we are going to do 1 double crochet in the next 4 chains. Two, 3, and 4. Okay, so now we are going to skip the next 2 chains and single crochet into the 4 after that. So skip those 2 and do 4 double crochets in the next 4 chains. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now into the next, we're going to do 3 double crochets all into that same chain. So as you can see, we've got our first dip of the chevron pattern and our first top of our chevron pattern. Now we will do a double crochet into each of the next 4 chains. And we're back to skipping the next 2 chains. So this is the repeat pattern that we'll be using for every row, no matter what stitch we're using. So we will do 4 stitches, skip 2, 4 stitches, increase by 3, 4 stitches, skip 2, and 4 stitches in the next. And since we just skipped 2, now we are doing 3 into the next change. And now 4 double crochets in the next 4 chains. Now, since our last was the increase stitches, then we did our 4, we're back to the skipping 2, and then a double crochet into the next 4 chains. Now 3 double crochet into this next chain, and 1 double crochet into the next 4 chains. And 4. And now we are going to skip another 2 chains, work 4 double crochet over the next 4 chains, and 4. And at the end here, we should have 1 chain left, and we will work 2 double crochets into that last chain. And then we will chain 2 and turn for row 2. So as you can see, the stitch pattern repeats is actually quite simple. For each row, we're going to do 2 stitches into the first stitch, then 4, then skip 2, then 4, then increase 3, 4, skip 2, 4. So it's pretty simple and goes quickly once you kind of get the hang of it. So now let's get ready for row 2. So rows 2, 3, and 4 are going to be exactly the same. So we're going to start with our 2 double crochet into our first stitch. And then we're going to double crochet into the next 4 stitches. Now we're going to skip these next 2 stitches. So skip 1 and 2 and double crochet into the next. And then 1 double crochet into the next 4 stitches. Now don't forget when you're counting, what I kept doing was forgetting to count this one, and I'd start 1, 2, and then I'd have to frog a row. So make 1, 2, 3, and 4. And now we're going to do 3 double crochet into the next stitch. And we're just going to repeat that all the way to the end of the row. We're going to do our 4 and then skip 2, 4, and then increase. So continue that, and I will meet you right back here. All right, so I'm just making my last 2 stitches in the last stitch of row 2. If you're having trouble finding that very last stitch, you can always use stitch markers. Like right now, I'd put a stitch marker in that very last stitch. So now we will chain 2 again and move on to row 3. So as I said earlier, rows 3 and 4 are just exactly the same as row 2. And so you can go ahead and finish up rows 3 and 4 the same way we did row 2. And I will meet you right back here to move on to row 5 with our color switch. Okay, so I have finished my first 4 rows, and each row finishes with 45 stitches total. So now we're ready to change to our next color, and you can switch to the colors however you usually do, whatever's your method. I have different methods for different types of projects. Sometimes I like to join with the magic join, but this one I found it easier just to cut the ends and let the ends hang, which also comes in handy for adding a little bit extra tassels when we are ready to put the tassels on the end, because we don't actually have to weave in both sides of the ends, just the one side. So I'll just go through how I am going to change colors for this project, but again, use whatever method you prefer. Okay, so I'm actually going to pull my hook out and undo that last yarn over. And I'm going to start my color change by pulling through to finish off that last double crochet. So first I'm going to cut my end here of the gray, still leaving it quite a nice length to be able to weave it in or hang down into our tassels. And then I'm going to take my next color, again, little bit of a longer tail, and I'm just going to yarn it through as if it were finishing off my double crochet. I'm going to pull on that gray tail a bit, and we'll tighten that up again once we kind of get through this chaining portion. Now for the end of row 4, we're going to be chaining 1, not 2. So now we will turn our work and get ready for row 5. So for row 5, and as I said, every row is going to have the same stitch pattern. We're just going to be using different stitches. So I'm just going to tighten this up again. Pull those tails. When we're using color 2 and color 3, so in my case, the pink and the coffee color, we're using half double crochets instead of the double crochet. So again, we're going to start right into that very first stitch with 2 half double crochets. And 2. So after I get those first 2 done when I've done a color change, I like to kind of yank on these again to make them a bit tighter. And then they should stay snug. So now we're just going to continue with the exact same pattern as we did in the previous 4 rows, but using half double crochet instead of the double crochet. And we're going to continue with color 2 or the pink, and we're going to do 3 rows total of this color. So I've got my 2, my 4, now I'm going to skip 2 and half double crochet into the next. Now 4 half double crochet into these 4 stitches. And then 3 half double crochet into the next. Perfect. So continue that along with your next color and the half double crochets for rows 5, 6, and 7. And I will meet you back here for row 8 with our next color change. All right, so I have finished up row 7. So we've got our 4 rows of the double crochet in color 1, 3 rows of half double crochet in color 2. So now we are ready for row 8, which is in color 3. So I'm just going to do my color change the same way I did. And then we will start with row 8. So go ahead and get that color changed and I'll meet you right back here. All right, so I've got my next color on and ready to go. And as you can tell with rows 5, 6, and 7, trying to find the last stitch on the half double crochet rows is a little bit trickier. So feel free again to use a stitch marker whenever you find it necessary. So row 8 again is going to be exactly like our other rows, just using the half double crochet stitch again. And we're only going to do 1 row in color 3. And then we will switch back to our first color, in this case, the gray. So go ahead and finish up row 8, and I'll meet you right back here. All right, so I have finished off row 8, and now we are ready to move on. So the rest is quite simple. We're going to be working this same pattern here. We're going to do this exact same, and then just the gray section to end it with. So you'll have 3 sections of gray, 2 sections of pink, and 2 sections of the chocolate or your third color. So essentially, we're just going to be repeating the same thing. Now, if you want to make it bigger and end with a different color or a different section, you can definitely keep going. Here are the row repeats for you. And you can pause here if you need to, just so that you have that available, so as not to get lost in the making. I know sometimes that can happen. So let's continue on, and we will work on rows 9 to 20. And a few things to remember: that our color 1 rows, or the gray, are all double crochet, and the color 2 and color 3, or pink and brown, are half double crochet. When you're going to be working your next row in double crochet, remember to chain 2. When your next row is going to be a half double crochet, remember to chain 1. So let's continue with that, and I will meet you back after row 20 to continue with the next steps. All right, so here I am finishing up row 20. There we go. So we've got that all done. As you can see, we've got 3 of the gray rows and 2 each of the brown and pink. So now what we need to do is pick one side where we're going to go through and weave in our ends. One side will have less ends than the other, so I will do that side. Now, if the side is a side you finished on and you want to leave these ends, because I think there is more on this side, then we want to finish off. However, if you are going to use this end for the top, don't finish off this part here and weave in the rest of these ends and then leave the other ends. I hope that makes sense. Essentially, we're just going to weave in the ends on one side only, because this is going to be the top that we're going to work into. So go ahead, weave in your ends on one side, and I will meet you back here for finishing off the top and making the hanging loops. Okay, so I've got all the ends weaved in on one side and all the ends left on the other. And now we are going to finish the top piece. Now, I've flipped mine, so this is actually the side where we started on. So you can either join your yarn here or weave in this end and join with a fresh piece of yarn, whichever you prefer. All right, so now we are ready to work across the top. Now I chose to finish this portion with gray, but you can use any of the colors. So what I've done is I've just joined my yarn onto my end piece. And so I'm just going to pull that through and chain 1 to get started. So what we're going to do is we're just going to single crochet evenly across the top. The number of stitches isn't too concerning. Just try and get it evenly as you can. So I'm going to be making them into just these little spaces created by each row. So we're just going to do single crochet into each little space. And as you can see, it is pretty easy to see a space to insert your hook. So there we go. I got 26 stitches all the way across. So now we are going to chain one and turn it back around. And we are going to make our hanging loops. So I did 4. So how I worked these was I did one at the very end here and then slip stitched across. And above these pink rows, you can see there's 3 stitches. 1, 2, 3. So I made the hanging loops in the middle of both pink rows, the next ones, and then one again on the far end. So how we get that? So we've already done chain 1, and I'm going to do a total of 8 chains. However, if you want your hanging loops a little longer, you can do more chains. So I'm going to do 7 more. So I've got my 7 or 8 total chains. So what I'm going to do now is right where that chain comes up, I'm going to slip stitch the chain right to that very first side. There we go. And there's our first hanging loop. Now I'm going to slip stitch until I get to this middle stitch on the pink row. And slip stitch into that middle one there. And now I'm going to chain up 8 again. There's 8. And now I'm going to slip stitch back down into where our chain started and just slip stitch that to connect it. There we go. Now we'll just slip stitch across again until the middle of the next pink section. Now going through your slip stitches, try not to make them too tight. Keep your tension nice and loose. So there we are, we're just back at that middle one. So I'm going to chain 8 again. and slip stitch back into that same spot. And there we have now our 3 loops. And now we will slip stitch to the end here. So there we are at the end. We will chain up 8. And slip stitch back to that same spot. And from here, we can just finish off this section. And for this part, you'll want to leave just enough to tie off. There we go. So now we are ready to insert our dowel or our stick. And we're just going to feed that through the loops. And of course, if you do want to block your main piece here, you can do that first. Otherwise, if you're going to finish it and then hang it and then steam it, you can continue with this part and the next step. So there we go, like just up, and you've got your hanging piece. So for the hangers that go on the ends here, so we can either just take our string, tie it on, make it as long as we want, and tie it in the other end, or we can attach our yarn and make a chain. So I found the easiest way to attach the yarn was to begin, if you want to make the chain, is to begin like we're doing a slip stitch or our slip knot. But before we pull that through, loop it on, hold the tail, and just tighten it on like so. Then get your hook in there, and you just want to pull that starting tail and your working yarn, and make sure when you go to chain you have your working yarn and not the tail, and then just chain up. So I've done a chain of 50, and I'm just going to turn this around so I can work on the other end. And now we are just going to attach it to the other side. So put your working yarn on that side. This can be tricky working with the wood. Pull up the loop and pull it through that last chain. Chain, pull it through one more time for that little bit of extra security. Chain 1, and then pull that through. We will cut our yarn with long tail and tighten that. And you can wrap it and knot it a couple extra times if you'd like, and then just weave that back into the chain. So there we go. We have our tops there. We've got our hanging rope, our loops, and we are ready to start the tassels. I just want to come back and show you here that to make this extra secure, I've actually gotten my yarn needle out, and I'm just going to wrap it around a few times and make some knots here just to help keep that really nice and secure. So we're just going to do that a couple times and make that really secure. And you can pull that quite tightly so it doesn't move, and then just weave your tail up into the chain there. All right, so now we are ready to add the tassels to the bottom of our wall hanging. How we're going to do that is at the end of each row, as you can see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to add 2 strands of the corresponding color. So what I've cut and what you can pause and cut, I cut the strands at 25 inches long, and I did 30 for the gray, 12 for the pink, and 8 for the brown. I did cut a few extra just to be safe. The other thing is because we only have one row of the coffee or the brown color, I'm going to do 4 in on those spots instead of just the 2 strands, just to help bulk that section up a little bit. So go ahead and cut your strands, and then we can attach them. Great, so we are ready to attach the tassels. So what I want you to do is take a look at your wall hanging and figure out which side you want to be the front and what side you prefer to be the back. Not that it really matters, but just flip it over so that the side you're going to utilize as the front is face down. So then we're going to take our 2 first strands and try and find the center of it and fold it up. Then we will be using our crochet hook. So we're going to get into the first corner there. We're going to loop our crochet hook on those 2 and pull that through. And then just grab the strands, pull it through, and pull tight. And the reason I said have your front facing forward is just it has a little bit of a nicer look for finishing on the others when you do it that way. You can pull your loop through the opposite way if you prefer. I just find this way easier. So now we are ready for the next set. So we're going to just do the same thing on this next row here. And so grab your loops, pull them through, and pull that through. And we've got those on there. The other thing you're going to want to do is your hanging pieces here from the tails. You want to make sure you pull those nice and snug. So there we go. That's how we're going to attach our tassels. So go ahead, work all the way across. Again, for the end of each row, do 2 in each, except the brown. I'm going to try it with 4 just to bulk that up a little bit more. And go ahead and do that, and I will meet you right back here. So I just wanted to mention one more thing too when you're doing your tassels and you come to your tails there. What can be helpful, because I know some of them might not seem all that secure, is when you are attaching your tassels, we're going to pull through. Where's that one? So we've got our loop through. Make sure before you grab your ones to pull through, grab the tail and pull that through with it, and that'll help kind of make that one more secure. And then your tail is a little better snug there. Perfect. And there we go. We've got our tassels attached. In the end, I did 3 strands for each of the brown rows, not 4. However, you can totally customize this, and instead of doing 2 on the other colors, you can do those as 3 or do more, however full you want to make that. The next step then is just to hang it up, and you can go ahead and trim the ends to make them straight. You can trim them at an angle, however you'd like. I just hung mine up and I'm going to trim straight across. You can also give it a nice steam while it's hanging if you have a steam to get everything nice and straight. If you don't have a steamer, you can always reward yourself, hang it in the bathroom, take a nice, long, hot, relaxing shower, and that steam should help as well. Thank you so much for joining me today making the wall hanging. I hope you like it as much as I do. I'd love to see your finished makes, especially with some different colors. So if you post on socials, don't forget to tag me. And before I go, just a quick reminder to like and subscribe to the channel so that you'll know when I have new videos released and tutorials, and you can stay up to date with Through the Loop Yarn Craft. Well, that's it for today. Thanks again for joining me, and I'll see you next time.